The Long Beach Unified School District is proud to present The Forum, providing an enlightened discussion of the issues which are important to our community.
And welcome to The Forum. We hope that you have been joining us on a regular basis and you like what you've seen. Remember that The Forum is an interactive discussion program, and we invite you to stop by our Forum website or email us with your questions, comments, and advice for the lovelorn. We'll give you those addresses later in the program, so have a pencil handy. The ground rules for this show are simple. Each panelist is required to be insightful, responsible, and fascinating. I'm confident that today's guest will be all of these things and more. Representing educators today is Matt Saldana. Mr. Saldana was born and raised on Catalina Island. He's been a teacher, an activity specialist, and an assistant principal. And for the past several years, he's been the principal at Avalon Schools on Catalina. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you.
Our first student is Kim Lim. Kim is a graduate of Millikan High and Long Beach State. She's gaining experience, respect, and a very good reputation as a reporter and anchor for Ed.News, Ed.Sports, and IE News. Kim plans to use this experience to develop a successful career in television, and I'm sure she will. Welcome, Kim.
Well, thank you.
Our next student is Diana Nguyen. Diana is one of the new kids on Ed.TV, but she has already made her presence felt. She's a senior at Millikan High, and her goal in life is to dominate the broadcasting world like no one has since Howard Cosell. Welcome, Diana.
Glad to be here.
And representing parents is a man who has a legendary status in our district, Mr. Max Fraley. Max grew up in Indiana and played high school basketball against a guy named James Dean. In a career spanning 41 years, he's been a teacher, a vice principal, a principal, and a department director. But the biggest factor in his life has been raising 3 daughters and 2 sons. Thank you for being here, Mr. Max.
My pleasure.
Today's show is called Growing Up, Then and Now. We're represented by at least 4 generations on this panel, so I will start with the elder statesman, Mr. Fraley, and ask, was it really uphill and snowing both directions when you went to school, barefoot?
Sure was. I'll tell you, that was the one thing about walking to school in Indiana. You knew it was always going to be cold, so you walked fast. Get there, raise it up. I think the biggest difference maybe in today and yesterday when I was there is the perception of things that are important in our lives. We're talking about values, things that you do and do not consider, things that you do and do not tempt. I believe that as we go through life, more and more frustrations enter the picture. That's probably only natural, but it's how we deal with those frustrations. And that's a problem, I think, that a lot of our current generation has, maybe more so than mine, in that they don't know how to deal with situations. And maybe we as educators need to address that and start putting that into curriculum, how to deal with certain situations. And I'm talking about here the development of character. So that's sort of a kickoff for this, Ray.
Well, now let's respond, students. How do you feel? Do you have character?
I definitely agree with Max. Definitely. A lot of the children or kids that are growing up today don't hold a lot of the responsibilities that I believe the older generation has. And when they don't know how to deal with it, I think they kind of rebel, and that's why we have sort of a youth problem here in Long Beach and throughout the United States. That's what I definitely agree.
Well, what do you think, Matt?
But why is that? Why wouldn't the children have, or if you take that position, they don't have those values? Why?
I think maybe it's because a lot of the children are dealing with maybe different problems in different areas of their life that maybe before they'd never had to deal with. Generations before had mothers at home and parents who were more here. And nowadays, both parents are off at work. The children go to school and hang out with their own kids, with their own peers, and that's their main influence. And I think that maybe that's the problem. We need a lot more moral ground for these children to be set on.
Right, but I think it's important, because I agree. I agree that there's something lacking there. But I think in conjunction with working with the kids, that you also have to pull the parents in, because that's where the moral foundation is going to come. And so how are you, how can we present, and how do you change the behavior? Trying to teach an old dog new tricks. How do you work with parents to get them to develop those skills, so that because they're the ones that are going to be dealing with those children for the rest of their life. And I think that's a big question as well. I'd like to bring the moral issue into the schools, but I also think we need to bring the parents more in as well.
But we keep coming up against that, and what happens when the parents aren't doing it? The parents aren't willing to be there or aren't able to be there.
I think they'll be there if you have to create a program that's enticing for them to come, whether it's a college program, whether it's a father-son, mother-daughter program, however it's constructed, even if it was a public school program that required parents to come in as part of the curriculum. You know, there's some innovative things that if you look out of the box, you can create an instructional program where you can work together to help have professionals facilitate parents working with their children. We have the school district has a parent project. Outstanding program, parents go voluntarily. So, however, where in college curriculum or high school curriculum do you have raising your child where you have both a parent and a child that can actually, the parent could get college credit and the child could go along with that experience. So if you look outside the box, I think that's possible.
Okay, well, we'll have to look outside the box after we look at this message coming up. So please stay tuned for more of the Forum right after this.
Sports. All the hits. All the time.
And we're back. Now, Matt, you were talking about bringing the parents in and working with the parents, but this program, the idea was that we heard some students talking about they were so tired about older people telling them, you know, they know where they're coming from. He says, that guy can't possibly know what it's like to be 17. Okay, so what's your response to that?
I don't think that's true. I think history repeats itself. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be studying history in our curriculum. In that there's the older generation, or any new generation for that matter, has something to share with a previous generation, or the next generation, just because they've been through some, not necessarily the same exact thing, but something that parallels it very closely.
But unfortunately, the one thing that history teaches is that we learn nothing from history. Am I right? And I mean, even back, you know, with James Dean, who we alluded to earlier, Rebel Without a Cause was the kid who my parents couldn't possibly understand me because I look so good in my, you know, red windbreaker. Diana, do your parents understand you?
My parents do not understand me.
Okay, what's the problem?
When they try, I kind of block them out because they don't know what I'm dealing with. They don't know computers. They don't know what books I'm reading. They don't know all that. So then there's a communication loss. That's mostly the problem in high school. No one talks to their parents anymore. They talk to their friends.
Well, I certainly disagree with that. I mean, your parents have a lot to teach you, and although there are certain areas that parents don't always cover, I think the experience of life itself they can teach you about. They went through falling in love and wanting to find the right education and going through career choices that you'll have to make too. And I think that if you only ask the right questions towards your parents, then you'll get an answer. I mean, of course, parents aren't always going to know all the right answers, but of course you can learn a lot from them. So I think you just kind of have to talk to your parents and see what you have in common.
Well, you can't put all the parents in the same box. They just will never fit. Each one's individually different. But I do believe that we have a responsibility on both ends, the children and the parents. And maybe as educators, we need to educate the children to make sure that they try to have some sort of communication with their parents on an ongoing basis. And we've got to start teaching patience and what patience really means. It's not an easy answer out there that we're going to be looking for, but I do believe we have to make the effort. And that's something that scares me, is that people have a tendency to not do anything about it. They take the easy way out. They let go. A coach on a team. One of the things that used to bug me when I was an assistant administrator in high school was seeing high school baseball players with chewing tobacco. And all it would take is for the coach to say, don't do that, or you're not playing. But yet some coaches didn't do that, and they still chewed tobacco out there on the field until the vice principal said, don't do that, or you're not playing. And that's something that I think more and more people need to do, is address the needs and what is happening and do something about it. And even kids need to be able to have the patience to sit down with their parents in some cases and say, Mom and Dad, I want you to really listen to me. There's no guarantee they're going to, but at least you have to try.
You know, actually, that's a really interesting point. And I picked this up from my wife, Valerie, in that what you have to do, it's easy to say communicate. The hard thing to do is build that into your system of routine. You know, everybody's, you know, the microwave really helped decrease the amount of time that we have to talk, because people can do something, you know, make dinner in 15 minutes and off you go. So one thing that's critical that my wife mandates that we do, once a week we go to dinner. And, you know, how often do your parents and you sit down for dinner? How often do you stimulate a dialogue on a routine basis where you can actually discuss some critical issues? They ask you what's happening. Yeah, they probably don't know. My parents don't know what I do. But we can still talk about issues when I have a problem. And they're one of my great sources of comfort when I do have an issue or do have a problem, and probably the most loyal source of comfort. They're the people that I can go to. But the only way I can do that is if I go meet with them, you know, once a week, once a month, or whatever. But you have to build a routine. Holidays are critical. You know, even if you're far apart, you've got to establish that.
I hear you talking about a need for courage. It takes courage to be the one to stand up and say, no, we shouldn't do this, or yes, we should do this. You're talking about, you know, a family situation where somebody's got to be the head of the family. Okay, we've got a lot of situations where that's just not going to be able to happen in you know, a single-family household, or maybe a single-parent household, or maybe a no-parent household. You know, what are we going to do? You know, a lot of kids are being raised by their grandparents, that sort of thing. Their parents are out of the picture. Their major formative influences are coming from the streets.
Well, and I think they're also coming from the schools, and there's just a huge responsibility. And I think we all try it. If anybody cares to shadow an administrator or a teacher, you know, in today's educational world, you'll find that it's so much more than just information out and trying to get the kids to learn the different subjects. There's the counseling issue, and this is across the board. This is secretaries, nurses, recreation aides. There's a number of people that are really working hard. So the people are there. It's incumbent upon personal responsibility as well. If you're saying that somebody's not there to support them, there's somebody there, but that child or that person needs to be willing to accept that that discussion and that dialogue and want to get the help. When they want it, they're going to get it somewhere.
And it also has to be a continuous effort to recognize those needs that these kids may have at the schools and to re-educate or re-evaluate what you're doing for the students on your campus. And it doesn't happen once every 10 years, once every 5 years. It should be addressed every year, that these are the activities we need to have here on our campus this year to address the needs of the various students. And teachers, you know, I'm in a world where tenure comes along, and you know, you could really get in a tough one on that. But somewhere along the line, I think we need to make sure that teachers are going back and being re-educated to the present needs of this present generation, because it changes. Change is good, but you've got to be able to keep up with it, all the other people, to address it, and we're not doing that.
And you got to make sure you're changing for the better.
That's right.
Too.
That's true. That's true. Well, some change can be bad, no doubt about
exactly.
that.
So now we've got to make a change, because we are going to go away to a public service announcement, which you will be very interested in. So please stay and come back, and we'll be back with more of the Forum right after this.
Hello there, I'm Ethel Merman. I know I passed away several years ago, but thanks to the magic of makeup and the Krellman process, I'm back and bigger than better than ever. And it's of interest, I think, although, I'm sorry, good morning, that you're watching me on Ed TV. Now, I've known Ed personally, and I call him by his nickname, Dot, but be that as it may, and I personally doubt that it is, I wonder if, do you know what you're looking at? You're looking at this pen. See how easy it is to fool people? But you're watching a channel that you should watch more often.
Welcome back. We were talking about change and about generations and about how we're alike and how we're different. We're interested in values now and what's important to each of us. Diana, what's important to your generation?
Friends. Friends are definitely important. We learn a lot about each other through friends. If we're not getting things at home, we want to know what people think. Our generation, I mean, they share the same interests, they share the same downfalls. We have a lot of things in common. That's the main thing, friends.
So friends are more important than like family?
Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. When you're growing up and you have only one parent in the home, and your parents trying to go to work and all that, and sometimes you need a little break. You need to talk to your friends.
Yeah, I see what you mean. You talk about the differences in generations. And when most of us old guys grew up, there were two parents in virtually every house, and mom was at home 90% of the time. So you could always count on mom being home when you got sick in school or something like that. You didn't have to have a work number. What about you? You're a little bit older than Diana. What are the values of your generation?
For my generation, a lot of the new technology was just coming out. So I see my generation as trying to always catch up to that pinnacle where they're always trying to succeed, to get that job, to work with the computers and do all of the new stuff, the new technology.
The technology is one of those exterior things that forms us. A friend of mine just died. He was 82 years old, and he was a child of the Depression. So the values to his family were a roof over their head, shoes on their feet, food in the cupboard. Those were, they felt like if they had that stuff, they had it made, and they were not about to waste 1 cent, okay? Then you came, up a generation to where, Max and Matt and myself started, coming into the picture, and we started developing, things like credit and stuff like that. And we started, buying on time, and our value system differed, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Quite a bit. And something that Kim alluded to there is really, to me, a scary factor for the future, and that's technology. I have an article here from the LA Business Journal called Breaking the Rules, and what it deals with primarily is the use now of cell phones and how it's growing all the time, to where at meetings, someone all of a sudden at a meeting where they're supposed to be respectful and cordial and aware of what's going on will answer a cell phone call, or maybe the beeper goes off to disturb it. They even refer in here to at a funeral where someone gets on a cell phone, starts conducting business while a funeral goes on. I've heard cell phones go off in church. I've heard them go off in movie theaters when I've been watching a movie and so forth. Well, you add to that the beepers, the email, the faxes, talking on the phone in the car and so forth. And what we're doing is adding to the list of potential frustrations that you're going to have to deal with. We're not giving ourselves enough time to, from my generation, smell the roses. And I believe in the end that can be very destructive to the overall quality of life that we're living. And it scares me a little bit.
It scares me too. I mean, I certainly think that a lot of us rush through life trying to catch up to the next person, and I believe that we just pass by sometimes and not realize the moment that we're living in.
I like that, the concept of quality of life. I share that with my students, in that when I'm discussing careers and futures with them, I don't necessarily say, go to college because you're going to get these rewards and monetarily speaking. What I try to focus on with the seniors is quality of life. What's important to you? Getting that big job with the huge house up on the hill, but having zero time for your family may not be the quality of life that you want. And I think as you talk about values, I hope that discussion continues on elaborating on that, because I think that's critical, that family structure needs to stay in place, that time needs to be built in to discuss issues, and you have to do the little things that keep a family together.
Well, ask these people, what's important to you? What do you want to do?
Maybe getting a job is important. Maybe that's the goal of this generation. Maybe some people don't want a family. You want to start off good. You want to start off on the right track. Well, for me, I don't really see myself in a family type environment. I see myself business oriented, and that's what I want to do, and that's my goal. So family's kind of,
Let me ask you this. as a high school student, a question I have is, and having worked with at-risk students at large high schools and now work in a small school, what do the mainstream kids in a high school, what type of goals do they have? You know, are they setting goals with money being the #1 priority, going to college, you know, and money and college doesn't necessarily go hand in hand, but of course it probably works, you know, real well together. But what do the kids want to do? What are their goals as juniors and seniors now when they leave maybe within the next 2 years and then maybe the next 10 to 15 years? What kind of goals are your friends setting?
I can't tell you that. If I knew, I would probably rule the world. But teenagers are fickle. They don't know what they're doing. They're trying to live for the day. You know, they're just going by and seeing how it goes. If something's good, they'll grab onto that and try to go on to the future with that. But they're not really concerned about family right now. Because if we are, you get those teenage pregnant people in high school and then they end up dropping out. And then what can you do about that?
I think teenagers today are more unsure of themselves than any other time, simply because they are dealing with so much technology, so much violence in the world, and so many other things that generations before never really had to deal with. And maybe that's why children today are more ambivalent about going to college, about what their life is going to be like. And so maybe that's why they're taking it one day at a time to see what it's like.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I was thinking about it while I was preparing for this show, and that I remember when I was in college and just getting out of college, the young comedians who were on stage then were always doing jokes about their parents, and you know, they probably still do, but at the time I was in the same age bracket as these comedians, and they're all talking about, my mom's such an idiot, she feels this way, my dad's such a jerk, he feels this way. And I remember thinking at the time, that's right, that's funny. You think it's funny because you're thinking, you know more than they do. They can't possibly be as smart as you. They've gotten senile or something like that. And I've thought, in all the things I've learned since then, I feel less sure of myself now. I miss that sense of you know, assurance that you know everything, and then you learn more and you find out you don't know everything. So it's really weird. But one thing I do know is that we're going to take a break now. We'll be right back with more of the Forum right after this message.
Be sure to mark your calendars for January 8th, because that's when the Long Beach Unified School District presents Education Celebration 2000. Each school will have new and dynamic educational programs on display. Prepare your child for the new millennium with a bright future and lifelong skills. And that's not all. We also provide free admission and free parking. Don't wait, because the future begins January 8th.
Who are our heroes? Matt, who are your heroes?
Oh, you know, my friends, a lot of friends I've had that I've looked up to, adults in the professional world, but really my parents and my grandparents have to be the people I look up to most. And for my previous, you know, as a youngster, you know, now and forever, I'll be able to look to them, and even in memory, we'll be able to remember the things that they've passed down. So it has to be my parents and grandparents.
I definitely have to agree too. My hero is definitely my mom. My dad was great, but my dad always stood behind my mom, and she's the one who gave me all the moral and fundamental values that I think help me survive in life right now, and I will be always forever grateful. She's always told me that no matter where you go in life, you'll always have your parents because you're linked to them forever. And you can have heroes that are movie stars or whatever, but when tough times comes, it's your parents who bail you out. I mean, your parents are always there. Definitely.
Diana?
I don't know why I'm apologizing, but I'm sorry, my hero is not a big old movie star. My hero is my grandmother. She's been through so much, and through hard times, she's always smiled at the end. At the end, you always have to smile.
Okay. Max?
Well, I would pinpoint my father. He never placed that much for material things, but stressed the quality of life and the way that you lived it. He had a very high value system. He thought that a job, if you're going to work a job most of your life, it ought to be something that you really enjoy, so it's not really work at all. And he stressed just be happy in what you do. And I like that. I like that type of philosophy. And in coaching and in teaching and with my own kids, I've tried to do the same thing. You know, let's just make sure that we only have one life to live. Let's do it the best we can and be happy with it.
And that's interesting that we're talking about problems. Every time we talk about these problems, most of it seems to be the lack of a parent in a household, and here we ask for heroes and we get 4 parents, so that's kind of interesting. Of course, my hero is John Wayne, so what do I know? Now, what are our final thoughts on this? How are we going to fix this problem of the generations not understanding each other? Mr. Saldana?
I think one solution that's basically can perpetuate forever is just if people, families, and even friends can build in that time on a routine basis, let's say once a week, to go to dinner, to go to a movie, to go down to the beach. An hour is all you need. But if you can do that, I think you can really start to bridge that communication gap, and young people can see that old people or older people from past generations have a lot to offer them.
Okay, Kim?
Well, yeah, I agree too, but the problem with that is teenagers today don't really think their parents are cool to hang out with. So I think the parents are definitely the people who have to take the first step to show their child they have something to teach. And otherwise, the child really doesn't know where their parents are coming from or what they have to offer. So I think definitely if it starts with the parents.
Okay.
I agree. We have too much freedom. We're left out there to guess what's coming up next. If you just sit down and listen to your parents, you know what's going to come up next. We're listening. We are listening.
Okay, too much freedom. I'm going to tell your parents you said that. Okay, Max?
I don't want to create lost generations because I know there is a problem with today's youth and having that support from the parents. But to avoid the same problem repeating itself, I think we have to start the educational process very early with the parents and their youth, even before kindergarten. Addressing this togetherness of family that Matt suggests all the time, so that it starts there and comes up, because that's something I believe these 2 generations with Kim and Diane really lost out on. We were not educating the parents. We did not make the effort to create the opportunity for them to be successful parents, and that's something we have to do. You make that effort.
Okay. I would like to thank our guests on today's panel, Matt Saldana, Diana Nguyen, Max Fraley, and Kim Lim. What have we learned today? That we may gain valuable insights from a person who is older or younger than we are. That we are more alike than we are different, because as my grandfather used to say, it ain't the years, son, it's the mileage. Please tell us your thoughts on today's show by email, regular mail, or telephone. And please check out our website for more information on the forum, where we always exercise the freedom to think.